Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Katie and we are on the very final HIMI horoscope. If you're new here and haven't got a clue what a HIMI horoscope is, don't worry about it, I'll explain. So it was about this time last year when I started this, and I had been using HIMI gouache for previous dragons. I'd only done a couple though. I'd also used the Japanese Nika poster paint, and both of those mediums seemed like a really good one to do this style of dragon in. I wanted to do a year-long project which didn't require too much commitment. So I decided, let's turn the zodiac into some dragons in this cutesy style that I use. Now I must admit, some of them came quite naturally and some of them have been a bit of a challenge, and I will do a roundup video of the other 11, and including this one, as to perhaps just put them all in a place together, because that's a lot of work. That's 12 paintings I've done. Anyway, I am completely bypassing what this video is about, and this one is for you lovely Capricorns out there. Capricorns are often represented by a goat, but they tend to be a cryptid of sorts. They usually have the top part of a goat and then the bottom part kind of looks a bit fishy. So I suppose, for want of better words, maybe it's a mergoat. However, it's going to be a mergoat dragon, so that's what we're going with. Now, I do believe that Capricorn is an earth sign. However, with the background having the water behind it, or the ocean, it was kind of hard to get any brown hues in there. However, green's kind of earthy, right? Okay, it's a bit of an aqua green as well, but I just thought this would be perfect to use this colour combination nonetheless. And I managed to mix up a lovely, gorgeous, tealy aqua green because I just thought that would be perfect for this dragon. I also wanted it to stand out from the background, obviously. And I think if I had used different tones, it just wouldn't have created the right balance. The values perhaps wouldn't have felt right. And I'm really glad I stuck with this colour, and I'm so happy with how this turns out. I can't wait for you to see this at the end. I go on to cover the majority of this dragon's body with this gorgeous colour before mixing up a darker one for the shadows. To do that, I used the deepest, darkest blue which is in the background, and again that kind of reflects the colours and it kind of ties it all together, and it created such a lovely, gorgeous, deep greeny blue, and it was just perfect to do these shadows and just give this dragon some form. To keep him looking slightly goaty, I decided to keep his head features more goaty and the rest of it more serpenty. So he's got a bit of a beard, and the frills at the side of his head are a bit like how the goat's ears are turned downwards. And we've also got two horns on the top, and I'm definitely picking up goatee vibes off here. So I think we know it's a Capricorn, right? But obviously, to keep it looking like a dragon, it's time to add some of those scale details in, and this is like one of my favourite parts of doing these dragons. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm kind of sculpting the image, even though it's 2D, but by adding these highlights and tonal differences, it really starts to look a little bit more three-dimensional. To create the lighter green, I naturally just added some white in there, and I do return and go in there with a neat white as well. Now, speaking of the paints, these are the very same HIMI paints that I opened, I want to say September time. It might have even been sooner than that, and that was in 2019. They've dried out a little bit, but they've also dried out before as well. And I know that totally didn't make sense, but during summer last year, it was quite warm and I forgot to put the lid back on it, and they completely dried out. And it wasn't the end of the world. In fact, to be honest, it actually helped me gauge just how much paint there was and how much I'd got left. And all I did was add some water, and I just added a few drops at a time, let the paint soak in, add a few more, and got a palette knife in there and gradually mixed them and brought them back to life. It was time consuming, but I had a better idea of how much paint I had, and it also prolonged the life of them. I do recommend doing this with as clean a water as you can get, so if you want to boil the kettle and then let it go cold and use that, or use filtered water, I recommend that, definitely. You do not want these paints going all nasty and mouldy, and I'm pleased to say mine never did either, and I'd say there's about a third of what I started with left, so they've lasted a good while. But ultimately, if you can remember to give it a spritz of water before sealing it up and putting the lid on properly, you probably won't have to go through all of what I had to go through. I suppose really as well, I can actually be really honest about these paints because I've used them for over a year now, and you've seen me use them for over a year. And I do genuinely and honestly really like these paints, and I think they're really good if you want to start off with gouache and you've not used it before. You've got a whole set. Again, you've got to look after them. But they were really good value. I think you can get them on Amazon now. I got mine from AliExpress because it was a little bit cheaper, but by all means search for the HIMI, or they're also known as Arctics as well. I think the coverage in these is quite reasonable. Sometimes you do have to go over areas twice. Now, I don't really dilute gouache or poster paints and use them as a watercolour. I personally don't like the finish of it when I'm working with it. If I wanted something semi-opaque or transparent, I would just use watercolours and pick something that was specific from a palette rather than watering down something that's quite opaque. I also found as well, and again personal experience here, that if you added water to them, you didn't really quite get a very flat result and it would be a bit streaky. And again, I suppose that comes down to different surfaces you're using and how much water you're using with it. I'll be really honest though, they're not as nice to use as the Nika poster paints, but they're like my best paints. However, I would be too terrified to use them if I hadn't have gotten all of this practice in with the HIMI to begin with, so there is your silver lining. Now for light fastness and those properties, I can't answer that because I keep these stored away out of direct sunlight, and my intention is to make some prints of these. I know I've put a few of them up on my Redbubble, but I actually want to set up an Etsy store and sell them from me, and then you're going to get them directly from me then rather than through Redbubble. It just means I can choose the quality of the prints and the sizes, and I can customise them a little bit more. Now, I'm only thinking out loud here, but I would like some feedback. I'm also thinking of setting up a Patreon. Again, this is nothing immediate, but I would like to upload some of these to Patreon and just have the outlines on there so you could download them and colour them in yourselves. It's just an idea and I would love to know what you think in the comments. Anyway, I haven't really spoken all that much about the dragon. It's a good job the video's slightly longer. After adding all of those scales, and I feel like with each dragon the scales have become more and more, I thought that it just needed a white outline. I just thought it would make our earth dragon look more watery. I know, but I still really like how this came out. It also allowed me to tie in the waves by adding the lines of the waves just to show the flowing of the water, and again I think that looked really nice. It was all in keeping, and I didn't really want to go too detailed with the horns because I thought with it just interlocking slightly with the surrounding ring it might have got a little bit too busy, and I kind of like how luminous they look compared to the background as well, and again I think it's a nice balance on there. There of course is one thing missing, and again like the scales there seems to be more and more, and it's time to add the stars with my trusty plastic plate covering the dragon. And I love how this turned out. I love how all of these dragons turned out. Now if you're still here and if you're still new to this channel, I'm going to put the dragons playlist right at the end, and I definitely think you should click on that. Make sure you're all caught up with all of the dragons, and I will do a compilation where I will have them all on there and I'll have a little chat as I go through each one. Anyway, as always, let me know what you think of this particular painting. I love to hear what you guys think, and I do read them all as well. I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope you've enjoyed this series, and here's to many more dragons. That playlist is on the screen right now. I definitely recommend you click it, and I will see you all soon. Bye!